Up next on Three of Cups.
When you're showing up as being someone who is a natural overgiver, a nurturer to the point to where you're putting others before yourself consistently. There's a time and a place. There's a time and a place to know when to show up, but also know when to tell them you are not a therapist.
Arsa family, a safe space to speak authentically. We raise our cups, unifying.
And the reason I'm going in this area is because this example eventually leads to the victimized mindset. You create codependency in connections when you constantly show up as the therapist in the connection, where the person no longer is self-reliant. They are codependent on expecting you to show up for them, where they are no longer presently aware of why they need to show up for themselves. Which then encourages no accountability and no responsibility for themselves. The conversations are always about problems. It's no different than stating the statement of no good deed goes undone. There is a cause and effect to every decision you make.
What was once one turned into three. Reconnecting with Arsa family, a safe space to speak authentically. We raise our cups, unifying as three. We bring freedom in community. Random thoughts and golden nugget treats. Welcome, Three of Cups community. Let's go ahead and raise the frequency.
When you're showing up as being someone who is a natural overgiver, a nurturer to the point to where you're putting others before yourself consistently. And I mean consistently. They're going through some crazy things in life. It's clear that they're needing some support, right? This is just an example. There's a time and a place to know when to show up, but also know when to tell them you are not a therapist. But you hope that they actually consider getting one. Because you are not going to have all the answers. You are a guide. You're someone that will likely show up as a support system through encouraging someone to figure out what direction they should go. You're not meant to dive and swift through other people's emotions. That is their responsibility to figure out. You're not meant to do that. The connection with you guys is to share an experience, not to nurture a expectation of one person showing up as the counselor in every session you connect and communicate with each other. That goes back to the whole, there is a time and a place. Knowing how important it is to set a boundary in a connection to where you're not dumping, or they're not dumping, all of their emotional baggage onto you the moment you connect with them. That is not your job to swift through with them. That's going to create a codependent connection. And the reason I'm going in this area is because this example eventually leads to the victimized mindset. You create codependency in connections when you constantly show up as the therapist in the connection, where the person no longer is self-reliant. They are codependent on expecting you to show up for them, where they are no longer presently aware of why they need to show up for themselves, which then encourages no accountability and no responsibility for themselves. There will be a day then that you reach a point where you start to get tired of the hangouts or times that you connect. You're eventually going to get tired of the conversations always revolving around more problems that they have to work through themselves. The conversations are always about problems, right? And they're waiting for you to give them answers. The day you stop giving answers, the day you tell them it's time for you to figure it out, it's time for you to sign up for a therapist, it's time for you to maybe work with a counselor, it's time for you to actually get a personal person just for you to communicate with them, because you're done being that person. You're looking now for a real connection. The victimized mindset starts to fall into place with the person that created the expectation of how they expected you to show up because of the way you reinforced the behavior of constantly showing up for someone that was still not confident enough to show up for themselves. It's no different than stating the statement of no good deed goes undone. Right? No good deed goes undone. This is one of those things. As they go into a victimized mindset, they begin to feel bitter. They begin to feel emotions of resentment in some form or fashion, despite them claiming they understand. Or maybe they don't understand because they're reacting to maybe feeling abandoned, maybe not feeling supported now. When in reality, you've reached a point where you're now telling them it's time for you to support yourself. Because you are done putting someone else before yourself now, regularly. You're done doing that to yourself because you're now choosing yourself, and someone else is seeing that you're choosing yourself and that person wants you to still choose them. They're now shifting that mindset of now making up in their minds who they believe you are, because you're no longer being there for them the way they expected you to, because of the constant reinforcement of you giving them something they needed to give to themselves. Then comes the 180 trick, right? The 180 trick where the image of how the person saw you, the mentor or the guru or the enlightenment guru, whatever way they see you, therapist, teacher, counselor, whatever, right? There comes a 180 where they begin to see you as the complete opposite. And because they begin to see you as the complete opposite, because they're still not being responsible for the position they put themselves in, because they're still operating from a victimized mindset that they've shifted into, they're now going to start to do things to bait and upset you, but act oblivious to it. And if they don't act oblivious to it, if they actually admit it and acknowledge it, they are consciously aware of their intentional choices. And that's a whole other topic on its own. But we're going to stick to this one right now. When they begin to do actions towards you that then upset you, and you're trying to talk it out and express your position being upset, and they're not compliant, or maybe they are, and they're using the baiting tactic to get you to feel how they're feeling. It could be one of those two. But we're now shifting the mirror to you, right? So we're shifting the mirror back to you. And you start to feel upset, bothered, angry. How dare they? How could they? After everything I've done to go out of my way to be there the way that I knew they needed me to be. That's a victimized mindset too. That is a victimized mindset too, okay? And feeling through that is one thing. Stepping out of it is another, when you now have to be responsible for what got you to this point in the first place. Because there is a cause and effect to every decision you make, good or bad. There's always a consequence. There's always a cause and effect. The cause of you choosing to go out of your way to constantly put someone before yourself regularly, and you choosing to now shift the boat, now you're in a position where you're seeing the effects of that decision that you now have to be responsible for, that you have to take responsibility for, which also means you have to also be accountable for how you were not showing up for yourself in every one of those moments. Because you were putting someone else before you, not just only looking at them. There's a point that a person in these kinds of connections reach where having a big heart, wanting to resolve stagnant perspectives because of observing someone in distress.
Coming up on 3 of Cups.
And then you gotta go even deeper. You gotta then figure out, okay, if I've been doing this to myself this whole time, where is that coming from?
Raise our cups, unifying as 3. We bring freedom in community. Random thoughts and golden nugget treats.
They're showing you that they only valued you when you put them before yourself. It really comes down to understanding that when you're in a connection with someone, you need to make sure you're not filling a void that someone else needs to fill for themselves.
Unifying as 3. We bring freedom in community. Random thoughts and golden nugget treats.
You also need to make sure you're not influencing someone that needs to teach themselves what they feel is best for them.
What was once 1 turned into 3. Reconnecting with our family. A safe space to speak authentically. We raise our cups. Unifying as 3. We bring freedom.
We end up projecting that reality into the connections we eventually begin to victimize ourselves in when we choose ourselves eventually and we stop being the therapist.
What was once 1 turned into 3. Reconnecting with our family. A safe
that doesn't want guidance, they just want the answer. Because we as people all know we were in those spaces. We used to be there. We know what it feels like. We know how impatient we felt. We understood how uncomfortable it is to sit there and not have the answer and just sit in discomfort. But that is necessary.
Unifying as 3. We bring freedom in community. Random thoughts and
I think I hit the microphone. It's necessary. It really is. Because everyone is meant to experience their own form of chaotic transition into a new version of themselves that requires guidance for them to get there. Not influence, not them being told what they exactly have to do, not them being given an answer that may have worked for you.
Welcome 3 of Cups community. Let's go ahead and raise the frequency.
And the reason I'm saying that is because everybody's journey is different. It doesn't matter how aligned your stories are. It doesn't matter how aligned your traumas are.
raise our cups. Unifying as three. We bring freedom in community. Random.
And this goes for yourself too. Okay, we ain't leaving you out. All right, like this is everybody. Okay, we're all in this together. Okay, all right, okay. We then run into experiences where there's trauma dumping.
Reconnecting with our family, a safe space to speak authentically. We raise
That,
our cups.
yes, is connected to a victimized mindset.
Random thoughts and golden nugget treats. Welcome 3 of Cups community. Let's go ahead and
That victimized mindset for that specific thing incorporates trauma dumping is an individual that is really running away from a lot of internal accountability.
Authentically, we raise our cups. Unifying as 3. We bring freedom in community. Random thoughts and golden nugget treats. Welcome 3 of Cups community. Let's go ahead and raise the frequency.